This is the Hawker Siddeley Harrier GR.3, a vertical takeoff and landing capable strike fighter on the British aviation line at Tier 6, BR 9.7, and being placed before the Jaguar GR.1. Many players that take out the GR.3 might be progressing from the premium Harrier GR.1, and while these two models are quite similar, one of the primary differences in combat is the missile armament between the two versions. The GR.1 uses the SRAM, a highly agile short-range missile with a 20G overload but a range of only around 1.24 miles or 2 kilometers. The GR.3 on the other hand uses the AIM-9G. This is a less agile missile with a 16G overload, although it has a fair improvement when it comes to flight range. Due to this, the AIM-9G won't be so effective in close-range dogfight scenarios where the SRAM would usually thrive, but can be used to take down targets effectively at longer ranges thanks to its 11.2 mile or 18 kilometer flight range. Another point of note is that only 2 of the AIM-9s can be carried on the aircraft at once, unlike the 4 SRAMs on the GR.1. Due to this, you will want to ensure that you fire these missiles in situations where the chance of success is highest. In addition to its air-to-air weaponry, the Harrier then has a selection of ground attack payloads, including both 1,000 and 500-pound bombs and SNEB unguided rockets. These payloads can be carried in a variety of combinations, both with and without air-to-air missiles. In addition, both weapon types have ballistic computer assistance, which will certainly come in handy if you're planning to use the Harrier for close air support. The Harrier then has a fixed armament of 2 30mm Aiden Mark IV cannons with 200 rounds per gun and a fire rate of 1,200 rounds per minute. This gives these guns around 10 seconds of trigger time. These cannons then have 4 ammunition belt types available: default, air targets, ground targets, and stealth. Personally, I stuck with the air target rounds and they seem to work quite well. As for countermeasures, the GR.3 can carry 60 flares. The flares come as a Tier 1 modification and have certainly come in handy quite a few times during my time playing the aircraft. As for flight performance, the Harrier certainly excels on the acceleration front, with its powerful Pegasus Mark 103 jet engine being able to go from hover to its max speed within about 50 seconds and easily get into combat speeds within around 20 seconds. This will make recovering from low-speed maneuvers and extending away from slow enemy aircraft quite easy, and of course this brilliant amount of thrust also gives the Harrier rather good energy recovery after turns, which can certainly help you maintain the upper hand in engagements. And while the Harrier's maneuverability isn't exactly amazing, thankfully it's not a flying brick either. Personally, I prefer to engage enemy aircraft with high-speed gun runs or by using my missiles, but I will happily do a few turns with an enemy if I can see it working out in the short term. However, I personally dislike going into a full-on dogfight with the Harrier, as you can rather quickly lose the upper hand against more maneuverable enemy aircraft, another reason that the fantastic acceleration can come in handy. Some additional features on the Harrier GR.3 include a radar warning receiver system that actually comes as a stock feature on the aircraft. This will notify you with a ping whenever a radar is being used nearby. The system can come in handy in ARB from time to time, although will be most useful for CAS pilots trying to evade enemy SPAA. The Harrier does then get a detailed cockpit model, a feature that sim players will appreciate, although unfortunately it currently lacks any secondary camouflage schemes. So our first game in ARB is on the map Malta, and I start off with a vertical takeoff from a relatively empty airfield. However, by the time I get to the battlefield, I do find myself surrounded by many more friendly aircraft, most of which are Harriers. Nonetheless though, the first enemy I come into contact with is an F-104 starfighter. Of course, I have no chance of catching the starfighter on the deck. However, my AIM-9G does have a peak speed of Mach 2.5, so has no issues catching the enemy aircraft and, splashing, getting a critical hit, and that F-104 very quickly burns down, giving me my first kill. I then enter a failed head-on with another F-104, a Japanese F-104, who continues to run away. I decide to turn around and begin to trail that F-104 to see if I can get a missile off. Of course, at the current range, he is extending away from me. I don't feel the missile would likely be that successful. However, he does then begin to turn in an attempt to trail another friendly Harrier. So him, in coordination with an enemy F-86K, are now following a Harrier. So I fire a missile on the F-104, the faster of the two hostile aircraft, which then splashes and gives me my second kill. The friendly Harrier begins to turn, and the F-86K follows, and very quickly seems to spot me trailing him, and decides to attempt to evade. Thankfully though, this allows me to get close enough to go guns on, and get a relatively easy shoot down. So that's my third kill of the game. I successfully took down 2 enemy aircraft that were trailing a friendly Harrier, allowing that Harrier to return back to the combat zone and help us hopefully win the game. Heading back in though, we have a few MiG-19s. Of course the MiG-19, the German MiG-19 that is, relatively fast, doesn't have air-to-air missiles, but it does have some very punchy 30mm cannons. I have a T2 on my tail that I will need to keep an eye on, and a MiG-19 seemingly coming straight towards me, so I decide to enter a head-on. I feel I have a pretty good chance. His guns are quite powerful, but mine are also quite powerful, so I fire, pull away, and a pretty good successful head-on with no damage taken to my aircraft. As I continue, just to demonstrate the flares on the aircraft, the T2 does then fire a missile. I deploy some flares, turn away from them, and the missile is successfully defeated. And with that, the exciting part of my game is more or less done. I did have a few head-on attempts with some of the remaining MiG-19s, although unfortunately I was not able to get a 5th kill. Nonetheless though, 4 kills, first in the team, certainly not a bad result. Into our second game on the map Spain, again taking off vertically, this time though making a 90-degree turn, so I can begin to head towards where I will hopefully encounter some of the enemy aircraft. Not too long after the beginning of the game, myself and one of my squad mates encountered an enemy MiG-17AS. Now I did mention previously that I don't really like going into full-on dogfights with the Harrier, and to try and protect my squad mate, this was kind of something I had to do. After a few failed gun runs, I do eventually get the MiG-17, although not before he can take down one of my squad mates, which is rather unfortunate. Nonetheless though, I did get that kill, and looking back, I then have a MiG-21 coming up behind me. Now, this was a rather interesting situation. Of course, the MiG-21 F-13 has a single 30mm cannon with only 60 rounds of ammunition. I was actually able to defensively fly for long enough that they seemingly used up all of their ammunition, meaning that all they could do was either run away or just try to keep me distracted until another enemy aircraft came along. Nonetheless though, after a bit of turning with them on my tail, I do get to a position where they're not on my tail, and we're kind of just turning parallel to each other. I find the roll rate on the Harriers pretty good, although I would personally say the MiG-21 probably has a maneuverability advantage. Now this is where we begin to get to the more interesting part of this engagement. As I have a single enemy aircraft near me, who I presume not to have any more ammunition left, I decide to try something out. I essentially switch into the hover mode, lowering my nozzles to 90 to 100 degrees, and first off attempt a gun run, which is unsuccessful, but then I flip the aircraft around, and I turn on the missile seeker. As I do this, I also put the nozzles back towards a level flight mode so I can speed up a bit, giving the missile a better chance to get a good launch, and splash. There we go, the MiG-21 is now on fire, and he luckily burns down just before a friendly hunter can finish him off. Certainly one of the more interesting engagements I have had in the Harrier, and did allow for actually a good stretch of defensive flying practice for myself, and a good show of some of the things you can pull off when using the vertical takeoff functionality a bit creatively. As you will have just seen, my third and final kill of the game was on a Yak-38 who was running away, of course using one of my AIM-9G missiles. Nonetheless though, another decent game. Did get a bit more practice with the guns and some more manoeuvring, and really while flying the Harrier, due to commonly facing a lot of supersonic aircraft, I have actually been able to practice my defensive flying quite a bit, which has proven to be rather enjoyable. So into our third and final game, yet again on the map Spain. My initial tactic is usually on this map to fly out over the mountains and hopefully find some enemy fighters that are looking to attack our bot bombers. However, in this game there were no enemy aircraft over there, so I rush in towards the big scuffle of enemy aircraft and initially engage a Yak-38 with one of my AIM-9s. Fairly simple hit there, and killed the enemy aircraft, so pretty easy first kill. As I'm going in, I start locking up some enemy aircraft. I'm kind of hesitant to fire. I have one missile left, and there are faster aircraft than those three that the missile will be better used on. So initially I begin to go for a gun run, and then I notice, Su-7, let's do a head-on. A very quick thinking head-on there, just yeet in, spam some shots, and thankfully I do shoot him down. So that is one of the faster aircraft dealt with. Another faster aircraft near the end of the game, MiG-21. This guy had been running away all game, and eventually he flew a bit too close, allowing me to get an A9 off, which rather quickly caught up and just slammed into the back of his aircraft. Unfortunately, he didn't quite die straight away. He was on fire, just flying towards his airfield for a good minute and a half, and eventually burnt down, giving me the kill, thankfully without any other friendlies taking that kill. Nonetheless, 4th on the team, though I did of course get 3 kills, so another game that fairly quickly demonstrates the gun capability and of course the AIM-9Gs on the Harrier GR.3. Overall, I have enjoyed playing the Harrier GR.3 quite a bit. Over the past few months, I have been easing myself into playing more higher BR jet aircraft, and the Harrier being added to the game really was just the icing on the cake for me, as it is perhaps one of the most iconic jet aircraft of all time. Of course, in-game, the GR.1 with its SRAMs is proving to be a bit of a balance problem at the moment, although I don't think that the GR.3 is all that bad on that front. For sure, the performance is quite good, although I wouldn't personally class it as overpowered in any sense. Really, flying a Harrier, especially alongside the new graphic improvements from the last update, has been a pretty nice experience personally, and I do look forward to playing this aircraft quite a bit more as I make my way to the Jaguar GR.1. Additionally, I can imagine that in the future I will have quite a bit of fun flying this thing around in custom battles, as, you know, helicopters in custom battles were quite fun, but now you essentially, as far as CBs go, have an aircraft that can hover like a helicopter and can go near to the speed of sound, so I can imagine that this will be pretty fun in the future. Nonetheless though, that'll be it from me. Thank you very much for watching the video. If you did enjoy, please consider dropping a like, and if you wish to see more content like this, of course do feel free to subscribe to the channel. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.